This is Sid and Friends in the morning.
77 WABC.
There's a long drive, way back in center field, way back, it is. Willie Mays just brought this crowd to its feet with a catch, which must have been an optical illusion to a lot of people.
Chicago classic, and that, of course, was the catch. Willie Mays or Vic Wertz in the 1954 World Series. That was the only one that Willie Mays won. The Giants, still in New York at the time, they would leave 3 years later to San Francisco, swept the Cleveland Indians. He did appear in a World Series his rookie season in 51. They lost to the Yanks. And then again in 62 in San Francisco when, again, they lost to the Yanks. Curtis talking earlier about that Roger Maris arm out in right field and the great Bobby Richardson catch. So Willie's gone at the age of 93, and there's only one person. Well, there's two. There's two. Christopher Mandor Russo will be on tomorrow morning. The only two people I want to talk to about this are Dog and Joe. Joe Benigno, WFAN legend, and joins me occasionally right here, and everybody loves when he does. So here he is, the great Joe Benigno once again. Joseph, good morning. Willie Mays, gone at the age of 93.
Yeah, look, the greatest all-around player I ever saw. I mean, I don't think there's any question about it. I got to see a lot of them in the early 60s. I remember, I was 9 years old. I remember the 1962 World Series. Willie McCovey ripping that ball into Bobby Richardson's glove as the Yankees win that series in 7. Ralph Terry was the pitcher. You played it. You played the great catch in the 54 World Series off of Vic Wertz with his back, all the way 460 feet away at the Polo Grounds in Vet Center. People say that the throw was even better than the catch after that. Look, what can I say? I mean, Mays was unbelievable. 660 career home runs, over 1,900 runs batted in. He had a 302 lifetime average. You mentioned it, only won that one World Series. Also, of course, was in the World Series with the Mets in 73. He was actually a big part of that team.
Well, but he didn't. He was not part of the World Series team. He was a big part of the team. People forget he had 239 at-bats that year. He did it 8 home runs. But I believe he retired in September before the Mets took on the A's in the World Series.
No, he played in the World Series.
Oh, he did? Okay.
He played in the World Series. And let me, and he had kind of a rough World Series. I mean, there was it might have been game 2 where he was playing center field and he looked like he was completely out of it.
Right.
He made a couple bad plays in the outfield. He had a little roller for a base hit. That was a big hit in that series. But he was definitely on that team, no doubt about it. And he played on that team in 73. And, the Mets have now retired his number, as the Giants have as well, which I thought was a tremendous move. They did that, I believe, last year or 2 years ago.
2022, they retired his number 24, and he spent 2 years with the Mets, 72 and 73. 14.
He had a home run in his first game as a Met.
Yes.
Off of Dan Carruthers, I believe, was the pitcher. He was traded for a guy by the name of Charlie Williams. And like I said, the greatest all-around player I ever saw, the greatest hitter I ever saw, the greatest offensive player I ever saw was Barry Bonds. And maybe Willie would be okay with that because that was his, Willie was Barry Bonds' uncle. Obviously, he played with Bobby Bonds. He played with, Barry's father with the Giants. He's one of the greats of all time. Like I said, the greatest all-around player I ever saw. You go back to the days in New York when you had, it is a little before my time, but the three teams in New York, Willie, Mickey, and the Duke. Duke Snyder for the Dodgers, of course, Mickey Mantle for the Yankees, Willie for the Giants. You had those three tremendous center fielders, all Hall of Famers, playing at the same time in the 50s. Can only imagine what you and I missed this. I was born, but of course I was 3, 4, 5 years old. How great it must have been to be to be alive in the 50s for what baseball was in New York.
Oh God!
And Willie Mays was a big part of it.
He was.
He used to play stickball up in Harlem with the kids. In the middle of the street. You see video of that all the time. So. What can you say? He'll be missed, no doubt about it.
I want to read you something. I know you know Mark Healy very well. Healy writes for a paper and edits the paper, The Wave, where I live right now in Rockaway. Right. And this is what he wrote on his Facebook account today. He says, no matter what comes out of the San Francisco media today regarding Willie Mays, he was not quite as loved by the media or fans when he played there. Here is a section from Mark Healy's book. Willie's time as a New York Giant was now over, and one would think that he would have been welcomed with open arms in San Francisco. Sadly, for much of Willie's time there, despite some wonderful seasons, the Bay Area fans preferred Willie McCovey and Orlando Cepeda, who they considered their own. Red Smith wrote in the New York Times in 1958, the welcome accorded Willie Mays was restrained, if not downright cool. Willie played center field, a social error in San Francisco. As far as the residents of the Bay Area were concerned, that position was the exclusive property of the homegrown demigod, Joseph Paul DiMaggio. And anybody who tried to muscle in was an imposter. Though Willie led the Giants with a batting average of .347 and 29 home runs, the fans voted Cepeda the team's MVP. Not long afterward, this is unbelievable, Joe, Nikita Khrushchev visited California, and as his car moved through the San Francisco streets, crowds along the curb applauded. What kind of town is this? Demanded the late Frank Conniff, an old Giant fan who was covering the tour for the Hearst papers. He said, and I quote, they cheer Khrushchev and they boo Willie Mays. Maybe that's why Willie wasn't considered all that nice after he stopped playing baseball.
I didn't realize all that. Maybe, maybe that's the kid. Actually cheered for Nikita Khrushchev. Was he banging his shoe on top of the car?
Yes.
Isn't it funny you bring his name up because now we got warships, Russian warships down in Cuba again.
Yes.
How about that?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, and while that's going on, I won't say what's going on at the White House. I'll be nice about it. We'll leave that alone. You know what I'm saying, bro?
That's a mess too. That's a complete mess.
Oh my God!
But Willie, they cheered on Khrushchev and they booed Willie Mays. Just unbelievable. So you got a chance to see Willie not just with the Mets in '72 and '73,
right.
But you said the first time in '62.
Yeah, I mean, I was 9 years old, but I remember that World Series. And the funny part about that World Series, it was going on pretty much during the Cuban Missile Crisis, right around the same time. I mean, it was October of '62, and I remember. I mean, I can remember right now. My grandfather was building a bomb shelter. I swear to God, I mean, I could see. I remember right now, my grandmother was actually getting canned food to put in this bomb shelter back in 1962. I'll never forget it. And that World Series was going on that time, and I don't know, and you weren't even born yet.
No.
But they had torrential rain in San Francisco for about 3 or 4 days that really delayed Games 6 and 7 that year in San Francisco. So that it's funny, that was kind of going on at the same time, and here we are, Willie passes away, and you got these ships down in Cuba. It's unbelievable.
Joe Benigno, and I tell you, between your father, God rest his soul, being a war hero, your grandfather making bomb shelters.
I'll never forget it, bro. But I'm telling you, people were scared. People were scared. This was a big deal. JFK, and we all know about I know you know your history. You know what went down there,
Sure.
People were scared back in 1962, but that was that great World Series, and that was a tremendous Giant team. You mentioned Cepeda, you mentioned Willie McCovey, Felipe Alou, Juan Marichal. I mean, that was a hell of a team, and Yankees squeaked out that World Series. Roger Maris made a big play. You mentioned it. I think I heard you say that in right field. He held Willie to a double when he could have easily got a triple and maybe a run would have scored there. So. Yeah, that was a great World Series, and I was 9 years old, and I remembered. That's probably the first World Series I really remember what was going on.
That's funny. Curtis Sleeper was the guy that brought up that Roger Maris played. For me, I was 6. It was 1973.
Well, you were born around?
No, 1973.
Yeah.
I was 6 years old, and my dad, the late great Harvey Rosenberg, who I miss every day, he used to take me and him to get our hair cut at a guy named Joe on Avenue U in Brooklyn. And I remember being in the chair, getting my hair cut. I was 6, and I distinctly remember Vida Blue was pitching. Wayne Garrett was at the plate. It was the Mets and A's World Series, and that was my first real memory of baseball.
Right. Yeah, that was the Mets should have won that World Series.
But ironically, that was the last year for Willie Mays.
That was his last year. Yep.
That is ironic. So let's get to the Mets now, because we had this discussion a couple of days ago. They win again in Texas last night.
Unbelievable.
They've now won 7 straight, 13 of 17. They're a half game back in the wild card with only 4 teams ahead of them. Don't look now, but the Mets in their last almost 70 games are better than 500. Look like a real baseball team. Are the Mets good?
Look, last night, they're down 6-2 in this game. Severino gave up a big 3-run home run to put them behind. They're down 6-2. They chip away. Alvarez had a huge hit in the 8th inning, a double to drive in 2 runs to tie the game. All of a sudden, he's red hot. Back-to-back 3-hit games for him. Vientos had another 3 hits last night, too, and a home run. But Alvarez ties the game 6-6. And they come back, they win it in the 9th inning. Alonso, a big play in this game last night, Sid, if you saw it. J.D. Martinez is at the plate with Nimmo on first and 1 out, and a catcher's interference puts Martinez on first, so the Mets have runners on first and second with 1 out. Alonso hits a double down the left field line to give him the lead for good.
Yep.
And then Diaz comes in, and maybe Diaz is finding it. He comes in, he gives up a bloop hit to start the inning, then a big double play, and then a fly ball to end the game. Right now the Mets are rolling. I want to give a lot of credit to the manager. I got to tell you, I like this guy, Carlos Mendoza. I liked him from day one, and I don't know how much the managers mean in baseball anymore, and I like Buck Showalter, but I'd look at Buck, and he always looked like he was constipated, Sid. You know what I mean? Buck always looked constipated. Yeah. This guy's always got a smile on his face. Even when the Mets were playing like garbage, this guy's smiling all the time. I think there's a lot of camaraderie in the locker room. I think Alvarez being back is huge. I think Vientos solidifying third base has been huge. I think even though Severino didn't really have it last night, I think, he's pitched well for them. The starting pitching has been pretty good. And if Diaz is going to be what he was even close to being 2 years ago, there's no reason in a terrible National League that the Mets can't, get themselves in a playoff.
Wow.
Let's be honest.
Wow. And, of course, across the pond there in the Bronx, as if things aren't good enough. I know Judge got hit on the hand last night, but he's okay. 51 wins.
Negative.
Yeah, 51 wins in, and now they get the reigning Cy Young Award winner back tonight.
Yeah, Garrett Cole pitches tonight, no doubt. Look, here's the bottom line. I say this about the Yankees. I say this to my Yankee fans all the time. You're basically just treading water till you get to the playoffs. It's all a matter of how many games you're going to win. Are you going to win the division? And the Yankees, there's only one thing for the Yankees. They got to win the World Series, Sid. Anything short of that is not good enough. This is the best team they've had since the team that won in 2009. You're talking about a murderer's row. Between Soto, Judge, Stanton, forget about it. I know Rizzo got hurt. He's done for about 6 or 7 weeks or whatever it is. But still, you get Cole back now. This kid, Luis Heel, has been unbelievable. Look, again, but the bottom line is, Yankees got to win the World Series.
Well, you're telling me that if they get to the World Series and lose to the Dodgers or the Phillies, that they'll clean house and it's a bad year?
No, I wouldn't say to clean house, but I think it's I wouldn't say bad year, but I'd say it's disappointing.
Really?
Yeah, I do. They got to win. The Yankees got to win. These are the Yankees. This is a team that's won 27 World Championships. Come on.
But they've won one in like 20 years.
I understand that, but aren't they held to a different standard than everybody else?
I think they used to be. I really do. I don't think that's the case.
You don't think that's the case anymore?
Doesn't
Aaron Judge, as great a player as Aaron Judge is, and I've heard people say he's better than Barry Bonds. Let's calm down now. We need to calm before we're saying he's better than Barry Bonds, all right? As great as he is, let's slow down. Okay, I understand the steroids. Please, I don't want to hear it. If it was up to me, I'd have everybody would be in the World Series in the Hall of Fame as they should be. But with that said, okay, Aaron Judge, as great as he is, okay, he's got to win. If I'm gonna put Aaron Judge in the pantheon of Ruth, Gehrig, DiMaggio, Mantle, etc.,
Jeter,
I got to see him win. Doesn't he?
No, listen, I don't disagree. I just feel like maybe it's the kid. But when George was alive, like you just talked about, anything less. Look, the Yankees made the World Series in '76. He was so embarrassed they got swept by Cincinnati. He got Reggie Jackson. I don't know if the kid feels that way about this team. As long as they're selling out seats and the S Network is doing okay.
No, I agree with that. But I think you're right. Look, the Yankee brand, and you're right. They're selling out the building every night and all of that. And Hal Steinbrenner is making a ton of money. I get all of that. But they got to win, bro. I mean, let's be real. The Yankee fan, they got to win a World Series. I mean, and to me, if they don't, I'll say it like the Rangers. If they don't win it this year, tell me when the hell are they winning? Because this team is their best team, as I said, since they won it in 2009.
So last one, final 30 seconds, and you're just special, Joe Benigno. You are, and not only because you have the best sports knowledge alive today, but you're able to turn it into the Cuban Missile Crisis and all that great historical perspective. On the way out, Willie Mays, you said, is the best player you've ever seen.
All around. You
said Barry Bonds is the best offensive player you've ever seen. Who is the second best player, not just offensive like Bonds, you've ever seen?
Second best player I ever seen. That's an interesting question. All around you're talking about. Because
all around.
Bonds is up there. You got to look at Bonds up. You know what? I'm going to say there's three guys that jump out at me. Okay, and I was fortunate to live in, be alive in the '60s and see all these great players. Three guys jump out at me: Henry Aaron, Roberto Clemente, who was an unbelievable player who doesn't get enough credit for being as great as he was, and Mickey Mantle. I'm going to say those three guys. Those are the guys.
That's not a bad list right there. Mickey, Clemente, and Hank Aaron.
Yeah.
All right. No Joel Youngblood? No?
Joel Youngblood just doesn't, and Ed Kranepool too. They just don't quite make the cut.
But true or false? Didn't Joel Youngblood play for both teams and two dugouts and on a doubleheader?
He got traded the same day. He played for the Mets, and they traded him to I forget what team.
Maybe the Expos. No, he went to Montreal.
Yeah, the Expos, and he got base hits for both teams that day. By the way,
that's right. That's right.
By the way, quickly, the greatest pitcher I ever saw, no doubt, number one. It's him. And that's
Gibson.
Landsman. The great Sandy Koufax.
Oh, Sandy Koufax, yeah. Well, but Bob Gibson's got to be close, right?
Bob Gibson's the greatest right-hander. Sandy is the great. Those two guys would be 1-2 as the best pitchers in my life.
I read something this morning that said, and included Seaver and Gooden, speaking only about the Mets, that when this guy was at the top of his game, he was the best pitcher the Mets ever had. When he was there, Jacob deGrom.
Nah, Jacob, I didn't want to hear it. I don't want. The guy was here's the bottom line on DeGrom, okay? Guy pitched 6 innings, okay? Lost most of the time. How many games did he pitch 6 innings? The Mets are up 1-0 or losing 1-0, and the bullpen winds up blowing the game. Don't ever put Jacob deGrom in the same sentence as Tom Seaver, Doc Gooden, or Jerry Koosman. I'm sorry.
Those three. Don't forget, Mike Hampton was big to get to the World Series.
Mike Hampton couldn't wait to get the hell out of New York so he could go to the schools in Colorado. It was so great there, and he stunk with the Rockies. And then he couldn't wait to get the hell out. Give me a break.
But we did have, what was his name? He threw the only no-hitter, even though Carlos Beltran hit a double.
That would be Johan Santana.
Right.
He was a good Met. He was a solid Met.
We had Pedro Martinez. The
unfortunate thing about Pedro was that he was really, he had that first year he was with the Mets, he was pretty good. He won like 15 games that year, was good. But, he got hurt, and they, that the collapse when they didn't win the pennant in 2006 and all of that, losing to the Cardinals.
Yeah.
But I like Pedro. Pedro's one of the all-time great pitchers.
And we had the great Randy Jones after he won his Cy Young in San Diego.
He stunk for the Mets.
I know he did.
Randy Jones won the Cy Young the year Jerry Koosman should have won it in 1976. Koosman went 21-10. He had an ERA under 3, I think 2.76. They gave it to Randy Jones because Randy Jones won 20-something games when he threw the ball 80 miles an hour. They loved him. I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Hey, John, this was fun. I love you to pieces. I really do, man. Thank you so much. You're the best. Thank you.
Sidney Arthur, Love and happiness, my guy.
So good. Joe Benigno on this big day. Willie Mays passes away, and we get the best. I'm sorry, man. Two best ever. Chris Russo and Joe Benigno. Thank you, Joe Benigno.